The air conditioner in Amanda's SUV blasted cold air against my face as we drove back from Lake Tahoe. My arthritic hands felt stiff, but I kept them folded in my lap, trying to remain as small and unobtrusive as possible. The weekend trip that I had insisted on joining had been a series of small humiliations that built up like sediment in a river. "Grandma, why do you walk so slowly?" my grandson had complained when I couldn't keep pace on the hiking trail. "Mom, you can't eat that, remember your cholesterol," Amanda had scolded when I reached for a piece of cake at dinner. Each comment landed like a tiny cut, barely noticeable alone but agonizing together. Still, I'd endured it all just to spend time with them. At 70, I'd learned that family time came with a price. Amanda's knuckles were white against the steering wheel as she navigated the winding road home. The tension in the car was palpable. My granddaughter with her headphones on, my grandson absorbed in his video game, and my daughter radiating silent frustration. "I don't understand why you insisted on coming, Mom," Amanda finally said, breaking the silence. "You could barely participate in anything." I looked out the window at the passing pines. "I just wanted to be with my family." Amanda let out an exasperated sigh. "Well, that's the thing. You always think you need to be included in everything. Not everything is suitable for someone your age." The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. I perfected the art of hiding pain decades ago. "I didn't mean to be a burden," I said softly. "That's exactly it," Amanda snapped, her patience finally breaking. "It was a mistake bringing you along. You're just she hesitated, then the words tumbled out. "A meddling old woman who doesn't know when to step back." The car fell silent. Even the children looked up from their devices, surprised by their mother's outburst. I turned my face toward the window so they wouldn't see the moisture gathering in my eyes. 70 years on this earth, and words could still cut deep. That night, back in my empty house, the same house where I had raised Amanda, taught her to ride a bike, bandaged her scraped knees, and celebrated her graduations, I sat in my rocking chair staring at the medical papers in my hand. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months if I was lucky. I'd received the diagnosis 3 days before the trip, which was why I had insisted on going. One last vacation with my family. One last chance to create memories they might cherish after I was gone. Instead, all I'd created was resentment. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone and dialed Amanda's number. It was late, but I knew she'd still be awake. She always stayed up watching those crime shows she loved. "Mom." Her voice was cautious when she answered. Perhaps she was expecting an argument about her earlier outburst. "Amanda, there's something I need to tell you," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I wasn't trying to be difficult on the trip. I wanted some time with you all because... I took a deep breath. "I've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It's stage 4. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. "What?" she finally whispered. "When did you find out?" "Just before the trip," I admitted. "That's why I insisted on coming. The doctor says I have about 6 months. "Oh my God, Mom." Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell us?" I closed my eyes, remembering decades of putting her needs first. The promotion I'd turned down because it would have meant moving her to a new school. The dates I'd canceled because she needed help with homework. The dreams I'd shelved to give her everything. "I didn't want to ruin the vacation," I said simply. Another long silence followed. "I'm coming over," she said finally, her voice thick with what might have been regret or simply shock. "No, not tonight. I'm tired. We can talk tomorrow." After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, rocking gently in the chair her father had given me 30 years ago. The walls around me were covered with photos. Amanda's first day of school, her wedding, the births of my grandchildren. A lifetime of love documented in frames. I wondered what would happen to these photos when I was gone. Would they end up in storage? Donation bins? Forgotten like so many other parts of me already seemed to be? The cancer wasn't a surprise, not really. I'd been ignoring the symptoms for months. The unexplained weight loss, the persistent back pain, the fatigue. Deep down, I think I had known something was wrong but had been too afraid to face it. Now time had become the most precious commodity of all, and I had just 6 months to decide how to spend it. 6 months to figure out what kind of legacy I wanted to leave. 6 months to make peace with a life that had given me so much joy and so much heartache. I picked up the framed photo on the side table. Amanda graduating college, her face bright with promise, my arm around her shoulders. I'd given her everything I could. Now I needed to figure out what I still needed to give myself. Outside, thunder rumbled as rain began to fall, nature's tears mirroring my own as they finally slipped down my weathered cheeks. Not tears of self-pity, but of realization. My life was ending, but somehow I felt like I was waking up for the first time. Amanda arrived at my house early the next morning, her face a carefully composed mask of concern. She brought breakfast from my favorite bakery and a bouquet of dahlias, my favorite flowers. Details she'd somehow remembered despite our strained relationship. "Mom, you should have told me sooner," she said, arranging the flowers in a vase. Her voice was gentle, a stark contrast to yesterday's sharp words in the car. "We need to discuss treatment options, living arrangements." I sat at my kitchen table, watching as she moved around my house with a newfound attentiveness. It was disorienting, this sudden shift from irritation to care. "The cancer has spread too far for effective treatment," I explained. "The doctor suggested palliative care to manage symptoms." Amanda's eyes welled with tears. Were they genuine? I wanted to believe they were. "You'll come stay with us, of course," she declared, setting a cup of tea in front of me. "The guest room is small, but we can make it comfortable." The guest room. I'd helped her paint it last year, despite her complaints that I was too slow, too meticulous. Now it was being offered as my deathbed. "I prefer to stay in my own home," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't be alone during this time." Amanda's phone chimed with a text. She glanced at it, then quickly turned the screen away. "Richard and I will take care of everything." Richard, my son-in-law, who barely spoke 3 words to me during family gatherings, who had once joked about how much better their lives would be once they inherited my house. As if reading my thoughts, Amanda's eyes drifted to the living room walls, the hardwood floors I'd maintained so carefully over the decades. "This place is too big for one person anyway," she added. "Too much maintenance." That afternoon, as Amanda made calls in my living room, supposedly to doctors, though I heard her mention property values at one point, the doorbell rang. It was Michael, my grandson, a lanky 16-year-old with his grandfather's kind eyes. "Hey, Grandma," he said awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot on my porch. "Mom told me about, you know." I nodded, inviting him in. We sat on the porch swing I'd installed when Amanda was a child. "I'm sorry for complaining about your walking on the trail," he blurted out. "If I'd known." "It's all right," I assured him. "You didn't know." We swung in silence for a few moments. "Mom and Dad were talking about the house last night," he said suddenly, his voice low. "After your call." I stiffened. "What about the house?" Michael looked uncomfortable. They said once you're gone they'll sell it. Dad wants to use the money for his business, and Mom wants to renovate their kitchen." The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Plans made over my theoretical grave, before I'd even left this world. "They've been talking about it for a while," Michael continued, guilt written across his young face. "I thought you should know." When Amanda emerged from the house, phone in hand, she froze at the sight of her son on my porch. "Michael? What are you doing here?" Her tone was sharp, suspicious. "Just checking on Grandma," he mumbled, standing up. "I should go." After he left, Amanda's solicitousness increased tenfold. She insisted on scheduling appointments, organizing my medication, discussing funeral preferences. Each suggestion was framed as helpful, but I recognized the underlying calculations. By evening, my small house was filled with a flurry of organized efficiency. Amanda had created a care schedule, researched hospice options, and even begun sorting through my belongings. "Just to help you declutter, Mom." When she opened my jewelry box, lingering over the pearl necklace her father had given me for our 25th anniversary, I finally spoke up. "Amanda, why are you really here?" She looked startled. "To help you, of course." "Is it to help me, or to help yourself to what I'll leave behind?" The mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold beneath. Then she recovered, eyes wide with hurt. "How can you say that? After I've spent all day taking care of arrangements that involve selling my house as soon as possible?" I asked quietly. Amanda's face flushed. Michael needs to learn to keep his mouth shut. So it's true. She sighed, dropping the pretense. Mom, be practical. What good is this house to you once you're gone? Richard and I could use that money. The business is struggling, and the kids' college funds. I see. I stood up, suddenly feeling every one of my 70 years. I think you should go now. Mom. Please, Amanda. I'm tired. After she left, reluctantly, with promises to return tomorrow, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room. The house I'd bought with my late husband, the home where we'd raised our daughter, had been reduced to a dollar amount in Amanda's mind. A commodity to be liquidated. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the decades I'd spent prioritizing my family, especially Amanda, the career opportunities I'd sacrificed, the dreams I'd deferred, the retirement I'd spent helping with grandchildren instead of traveling as I'd once hoped. I'd given everything, expecting nothing in return except perhaps a little respect, a little love in my final days. Instead, I'd become a forthcoming inheritance, a problem to be managed until the real prize, my house, my possessions, could be claimed. My phone lit up with a text from my sister Beth. Just heard from Amanda. Coming to see you tomorrow. Stay strong. Even my diagnosis was being shared without my permission, my narrative controlled by others. In the quiet darkness of my bedroom, I made a decision. The cancer may have taken away my future, but I wouldn't let Amanda take away my dignity. These last months would be mine to live as I chose. Outside, the first hints of dawn crept across the sky. A new day approaching. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging from the fog of betrayal. If I only had 6 months left, they wouldn't be spent being treated as already gone. The day after Amanda's true intentions came to light, my sister Beth arrived with a casserole and a fierce protective energy that had characterized our relationship since childhood. She's always been self-centered, Beth declared as we sat at my kitchen table. Even as a child. I raised her that way, I admitted quietly. After Robert died, I was so afraid of her feeling his absence that I overcompensated. I gave her everything. Beth's expression softened. You did your best, Denise. Did I? Sometimes I wonder if my best was actually what was best for her. After Beth left, promising to return the next day, I decided to tackle a task I'd been putting off, organizing my affairs. If I only had 6 months, I needed to ensure everything was in order, though not necessarily in the way Amanda expected. In my home office, I pulled out folders of documents, sorting through decades of financial records. The house was paid off, thankfully. Robert's life insurance had seen to that. There were some savings, my modest pension, and a small investment portfolio. Not a fortune, but enough to have made Amanda's eyes gleam with anticipation. As I reached for a stack of old tax returns on the top shelf of my closet, a faded shoebox tumbled down, spilling its contents across the carpet. Faded photographs, dried flowers pressed between papers, and bundles of letters tied with blue ribbon. I hadn't seen these in years. Decades even. With trembling hands, I picked up one of the letters, recognizing the handwriting immediately. My dearest Denise, the summer is ending, but my feelings for you only grow stronger with each passing day. Berkeley will seem empty without you, though I understand why you must transfer to be closer to your father after his stroke. Thomas, my first love, the man I'd planned to marry before life intervened. I sat on the floor, surrounded by memories, and read letter after letter. Thomas and I had met in college, two bright-eyed students with dreams of changing the world. He was studying architecture, I was in pre-med. For 2 years we had been inseparable, planning a future together. Then my father had his stroke. As the only child still unmarried, the burden of care fell to me. I transferred to a college closer to home, deferring my medical school plans. Thomas and I tried to maintain our relationship long distance, but in those days before cell phones and internet, distance was a formidable obstacle. Eventually, he received a prestigious internship in Europe. I encouraged him to go, knowing it was his dream. We promised to reunite, but life had other plans. I met Robert, settled into a teaching career instead of medicine, and built a different life than the one I'd imagined with Thomas. A forgotten diary revealed my mindset during that pivotal time. April 15, 1974. I saw Thomas's name in the alumni newsletter today. He's designed a museum in Chicago. I'm happy for him, though it stings to see the future we once planned unfolding for him alone. Robert is a good man and Amanda is the light of my life, but sometimes I wonder about the path not taken. The dreams I set aside. The museum in Chicago. I remembered cutting out the article, then throwing it away, feeling it was disloyal to Robert to keep it. More letters, more diary entries. Fragments of a younger Denise who had ambitions beyond motherhood and teaching. A Denise who had once planned to become a doctor, travel the world. I'd forgotten her, that ambitious young woman. Or rather, I'd folded her quietly away, like these letters, focusing instead on being a good mother, a supportive wife, a devoted daughter. Amanda's voice echoed in my mind. A meddling old woman who doesn't know when to step back. Is that all I'd become? A footnote in my own life story? At the bottom of the box I found a small notebook where I'd once written my life goals. Most remained uncrossed, dreams deferred and eventually forgotten. Graduate medical school. Work with Doctors Without Borders. See the Northern Lights. Visit the Grand Canyon. Learn to play the piano. Write a book about women's health. Simple dreams, some of them. Dreams that had seemed impossible during years of raising Amanda alone after Robert died, of caring for my aging parents, of always putting others first. But now, facing my own mortality, a startling thought occurred to me. I still had time. Not for all of it, certainly. Medical school was no longer in the cards. But the Northern Lights? The Grand Canyon? Perhaps even finding Thomas, if only to say a proper goodbye to the road not taken? 6 months. It wasn't long, but it was something. It was time that belonged to me. I carefully gathered the letters, tucking them back into the shoebox. Then I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and wrote at the top, Denise's last summer. Below it, I began a new list, not of dying wishes but of living intentions. Things I would do with whatever time I had left, not for Amanda or anyone else, but for that forgotten young woman who had once had dreams of her own. The first item I wrote, find Thomas. Finding Thomas proved easier than I expected in the digital age. A simple internet search revealed he had retired from his architectural firm 5 years ago. Several articles mentioned his award-winning designs and community projects in Carmel, a coastal town about 3 hours from my home. I hesitated before making the call. What if he didn't remember me? Worse, what if he did remember but wished he didn't? After rehearsing what to say a dozen times, I finally dialed the number I'd found. Hello. His voice was deeper than I remembered, but with the same gentle cadence that had once made my young heart flutter. Thomas? This is Denise. Denise Calloway. I paused. Though I was Denise Mitchell when you knew me. The silence lasted just long enough for my courage to waver. Denise. His voice softened with recognition. My God. It's been 45 years? 47, I corrected, then laughed nervously. I sound like I've been counting. I would have recognized your laugh anywhere, he said warmly. What a wonderful surprise. We talked for an hour, decades melting away as we exchanged condensed versions of our life stories. He had married, had 2 sons, been widowed 3 years ago. I told him about Robert, about Amanda, carefully avoiding mention of my diagnosis. This wasn't a call for sympathy. I'm actually planning a short trip to the coast, I said finally, surprising myself with my boldness. I wondered if you might be willing to have coffee? For old time's sake. I'd love nothing more, he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. 2 days later, I stood in front of my closet, feeling ridiculous as I fretted over what to wear. I settled on a blue dress that brought out my eyes and a silver necklace Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary. As I clasped it, I whispered a quiet apology to my late husband. This wasn't betrayal, I told myself. This was closure, or perhaps opening a door I'd closed too soon. Amanda called just as I was putting the final touches on my makeup. Mom, I've been researching hospice options, she began without preamble. There's an excellent facility close to us. We should get you on their waiting list. I felt a flicker of irritation. I'm not ready for hospice, Amanda. You need to be practical. These places fill up quickly. I'm going away for a few days, I said, changing the subject. Going away? Where? With whom? Her tone shifted from controlling to concerned. Mom, you can't just travel in your condition. My condition is terminal, not immediately debilitating, I reminded her. I'm perfectly capable of driving to the coast. The coast? Why? I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm meeting an old friend. What friend? You don't have friends at the coast. The dismissive certainty in her voice stung. Did she really know so little about me? Did she think I had no life, no connections beyond her? I'm meeting Thomas Reynolds. We were close in college. A boyfriend. She sounded incredulous, as if the thought of her mother having a romantic past was unimaginable. Mom, this is ridiculous. You need to be focusing on your care plan, not running off to meet some man from 50 years ago. 47, I corrected automatically, then sighed. Amanda, I appreciate your concern, but this is something I need to do. Need to do? She scoffed. What you need is to be sensible. Does he even know you're dying? That's not the point of this trip. So he doesn't know. You're going to surprise him with that news over coffee? Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Perhaps she was right about that one thing. I wasn't thinking clearly, or rather I wasn't thinking the way I had for decades, always prioritizing others' needs and feelings above my own. I was finally thinking about what I wanted. I'm leaving tomorrow morning, I said firmly. I've already booked a hotel for 3 nights. This is crazy, she insisted. At least let me drive you. No. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Fine, she finally said. But call me when you get there. And every day. And if anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. After promising to check in regularly, I ended the call, feeling both guilty and strangely liberated. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I had put my wishes above Amanda's demands. The next morning dawned clear and bright as I loaded my small suitcase into the car. The 3-hour drive to Carmel was peaceful, giving me time to reflect on what I hoped to gain from this reunion. Not romance, that would be foolish at this stage of my life with time so limited, but perhaps understanding, a glimpse of the road not taken, a connection to the young woman I had been before life's responsibilities had reshaped me. Thomas was waiting at the beachfront cafe we'd agreed upon, standing as I approached. He was still tall, though slightly stooped now, his once dark hair completely silver. But his eyes, those keen blue eyes that had seen such promise in me all those years ago, they were exactly the same. Denise, he said softly, taking my hands in his. You're as beautiful as ever. I laughed, gesturing at my wrinkles, my gray hair. You always were a charming liar. Not lying, he insisted. Just seeing with different eyes than most. We sat across from each other, 2 people in their 70s, connected by memories of who we'd been at 20. The conversation flowed easily, moving from reminiscences to deeper waters, the compromises we'd made, the joys discovered, the regrets harbored. I followed your career, I admitted. That museum in Chicago was magnificent. His eyes widened in surprise. You saw it. Only in photographs, I said. I never made it to Chicago. He studied me for a moment. You were meant for big things too, Denise. Medical school. Research. What happened? The question wasn't accusatory, merely curious. And for the first time, I found myself telling someone the unvarnished truth about the choices that had shaped my life. As afternoon turned to evening, Thomas suggested dinner at his favorite restaurant overlooking the ocean. Under the glow of candlelight, with the sound of waves as a backdrop, I finally told him about my diagnosis. His face fell, genuine grief filling his eyes. Oh, Denise. I'm so sorry. I'm not here for sympathy, I assured him quickly. I wanted to see you again. Before I couldn't. Thomas reached across the table, taking my hand in his. I'm honored that you sought me out. He paused, then added softly. Some connections never truly fade, do they? In that moment, looking into eyes that still saw the promise in me after all these years, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time. I felt seen. Not as Amanda's mother, not as a dying woman, but as Denise. A woman with dreams and regrets and a heart still capable of fluttering at a gentle touch. 3 days with Thomas stretched into a week. We walked along the shore, reminiscing about our youth while creating new memories. He showed me his favorite spots along the coast. Hidden coves, charming bookshops, a lighthouse with a view that took my breath away. In the evenings we shared meals and stories, filling in the decades-long gap in our friendship. I hadn't felt this alive in years. "Stay another week," Thomas suggested one evening as we watched the sunset from his deck. His home was modest but beautiful, with large windows that framed the ocean like living artwork. I hesitated. "Amanda will be worried." "You've called her every day," he pointed out. "Besides, isn't this time for you?" The question lingered in my mind that night as I lay in my hotel bed. Was this time for me? After decades of putting everyone else first, did I have the right to claim these final months as my own? My phone rang early the next morning. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, this has gone on long enough," she said without preamble. "I just spoke with Dr. Winters. You missed your palliative care consultation yesterday." I had forgotten completely. "He says time is essential for managing your symptoms. You need to come home now." Her tone was familiar, the same one she'd used with her teenage children when they'd broken curfew. It rankled. "I'm feeling fine, Amanda," I replied calmly. "I'll reschedule when I return." "Return? You're still planning to stay longer?" "Mom, this is irresponsible. You need to be thinking about practical matters. The house, your affairs." "My affairs?" I repeated the words slowly. "You mean your inheritance." "That's not fair," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Michael told me about your plans for my house. What else have you been planning behind my back? Have you already contacted real estate agents? Looked into estate sales for my furniture?" "You're being paranoid," she snapped. "I'm trying to help you." "No, Amanda. You're trying to help yourself." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. "Who is this man anyway?" she finally asked. "You've never mentioned him before. For all you know, he could be after your money." I almost laughed at the irony. Thomas doesn't know I have money and he doesn't care. He has his own. So what is this? Some kind of bucket list romance? It's not like you to be so reckless. Perhaps that was true. The Denise she knew, the one I'd been for most of her life, was careful, prudent, self-sacrificing. But that woman had been shaped by responsibilities and others' expectations. The real Denise, the one I was rediscovering, had dreams and desires of her own. "I'm coming to get you," Amanda declared when I didn't respond. "This has gone far enough." "No," I said firmly. "I'm a grown woman making my own decisions. This is my life, what remains of it. And I intend to live it on my terms." "You're not thinking clearly," she insisted. "The cancer, the medications." "Stop," I interrupted. "I'm perfectly lucid. I simply want different things than you do." "What are you saying? That you're abandoning your family to spend your final months with some stranger?" Her words were designed to wound, to trigger the guilt that had governed our relationship for so long. But this time I refused to take the bait. Thomas isn't a stranger. And I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just choosing to spend my remaining time in ways that bring me joy. "And we don't bring you joy?" "Your own family." I sighed, feeling suddenly weary. "When was the last time you visited me when you didn't need something, Amanda? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about my house or your problems?" She didn't answer. "I need to go," I said. "I'll call you tomorrow." After ending the call, I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling slightly. Standing up to Amanda had never been easy, but it was necessary. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about finally honoring myself. I had spent my entire adult life responding to others' needs. My father's after his stroke, Robert's during our marriage, Amanda's as a single mother raising her. Even my career as a high school biology teacher had been a compromise, the closest I could get to medicine while still being available for my family. Thomas invited me to dinner that evening. As we sat across from each other, the candlelight softening the lines on our faces, I made my decision. "I'm going to sell the house," I said. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's a big step. Are you sure?" I nodded. "Amanda wants it for the money, not the memories. I'd rather use that money to live these last months fully." "And how would you live them?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath, feeling both terrified and exhilarated by what I was about to propose. "I want to see the northern lights, the Grand Canyon. I want to learn at least one song on the piano." I paused, gathering my courage. And I'd like to do it with you if you're willing. Not out of obligation but as companions. Friends who once might have been more. Thomas reached across the table, taking my hand in his. I would be honored, Denise. Truly honored. That night I drafted an email to a real estate agent, attaching photos of my house. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer to revise my will. Amanda would still receive an inheritance. I wasn't so petty as to disinherit her completely, but on my terms, not hers. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a sense of peace. Not because I had accepted death, but because I had reclaimed life. My house sold faster than I expected. 2 weeks on the market and a bidding war drove the price well above asking. I signed the papers at a distance, with power of attorney granted to my lawyer rather than Amanda. The northern lights were magnificent. Thomas and I stood bundled against the Alaskan cold, his arm around my shoulders as we watched the green and purple ribbons dance across the night sky. I felt small beneath that vast cosmic display, yet somehow significant too. A conscious witness to beauty in an indifferent universe. Worth the wait? Thomas asked, his breath clouding in the frigid air. Everything has been, I replied, my eyes still fixed on the heavens. We traveled light, carrying only what we needed. The Grand Canyon filled me with awe. Its vastness a reminder of how brief our human lives are against geological time. In a small cabin near Sedona, I finally learned to play Clair de Lune on a rented piano. My fingers were stiff with arthritis, the melody often halting, but Thomas applauded as if I'd performed at Carnegie Hall. The cancer progressed, of course. There were bad days between the good ones. Days of exhaustion and pain that kept me bedridden. Thomas never complained, never made me feel like a burden. He read to me when I couldn't get up, held me when the pain made me cry, and celebrated with me when I rallied. You know what I regret? I asked him one evening as we sat on the porch of a rented cottage in Maine, watching sailboats drift across the harbor. What's that? That I waited until I was dying to start living. He squeezed my hand. You're not just dying, Denise. You're living while dying. There's a difference. Amanda called regularly, her tone oscillating between accusatory and concerned. When she learned I'd sold the house, her anger erupted. How could you do this without consulting me? That was my childhood home. A home you were eager to sell for profit, I reminded her. That's different. I was trying to be practical. So am I. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks after that. When she called again, it was because Michael had insisted. Grandma, are you okay? His young voice was thick with worry. Mom says you're traveling with some man instead of getting treatment. I'm following my treatment plan, I assured him. Just not in the way your mother thinks I should. But who's taking care of you? He asked. Thomas and I are taking care of each other, I said, smiling across the room at the man who had become my closest companion. And I'm happier than I've been in a very long time. Mom's really upset, Michael admitted. She thinks you've lost your mind. I've found it actually, I corrected gently. Tell your mother I love her, but this is my journey to make. 4 months after my diagnosis, with my expected 6 months more than half gone, Thomas and I returned to his home in Carmel. My strength was waning, and we both knew it was time to settle in one place. It was there, waking to the sound of the ocean each morning, that I began to write. Not the medical book I'd once dreamed of, but a memoir. A gift for Amanda if she chose to accept it. In it I explained my choices, acknowledged my flaws as a mother, and expressed hopes for her future. I wrote about the liberation I'd found in these final months, and what I'd learned about living authentically. I was writing the final pages when a knock came at the door. Thomas answered it, and I heard murmured voices from the hallway. Then Amanda appeared in the doorway of the sunroom where I sat wrapped in blankets despite the warm day. She looked tired, her face drawn with emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Behind her stood Michael, his lanky frame hovering protectively. Mom, she said, her voice catching. Amanda. Michael. I set my writing aside. This is a surprise. Michael insisted, she explained, moving into the room cautiously, as if approaching a stranger. He said I was being selfish. Out of the mouths of babes, I said, smiling at my grandson. He had grown even in these few months away, not just physically but in maturity. You look different, Amanda observed, studying me. Thinner, but I don't know. Peaceful somehow. I am. She sat in the chair across from me, hands twisting in her lap. I'm still angry about the house, she admitted. But Michael made me see that I've been thinking about everything except what you need. And what do you think I need? I asked gently. Her eyes welled with tears. To live your life your way, I guess. Even at the end. Especially at the end. Thomas appeared with tea, making himself scarce again after introductions. Amanda watched him go with curious eyes. He makes you happy, she observed. It wasn't a question. He does. But that's not why I left, Amanda. I left because I needed to find myself again. I didn't know you were lost, she said quietly. Neither did I, until I was found. We talked for hours that day, really talked, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. There were tears and recriminations, apologies and tentative steps toward understanding. Not everything was resolved. Some wounds were too deep for a single conversation to heal, but it was a beginning. Amanda and Michael stayed 3 days. On the final evening, as we shared dinner on Thomas's deck overlooking the Pacific, Amanda raised her glass. To Mom, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Who taught me it's never too late to rewrite your story. 2 weeks later, I celebrated my 71st birthday. A milestone I hadn't expected to reach. The doctors were surprised by my good response to the palliative treatments, suggesting I might have more time than originally thought. How much more? Thomas asked during my checkup. The doctor shrugged. Impossible to say for certain. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Christmas. Christmas. 6 more months than I'd been promised. Not a miracle cure, not a reversal of fortune, but a gift nonetheless. That evening, sitting beside Thomas on the beach as the sun set into the Pacific, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Not just for the extra time, though that was precious, but for the journey itself. What are you thinking? Thomas asked, his hand warm in mine. I watched the fading light paint the clouds in shades of gold and pink, as beautiful in their ephemeral glory as anything I'd ever seen. That sometimes, I said softly, it takes the sunset to appreciate the day. He nodded, understanding as he always did. And what a beautiful sunset it is. I leaned against his shoulder, breathing in the salt air, feeling the rhythmic pulse of the waves against the shore. In that moment I was neither young nor old, neither dying nor afraid. I was simply alive. Fully, completely alive, watching the day transform into night with someone who saw me clearly. It was enough. It was everything.